Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. My name is Marilyn. I'm part of the product marketing team at LoadSmart. Before we begin, I'm just have a couple of announcements to go through with you guys. As a reminder, on the webinar page, you guys can register for upcoming webinars. You can also check out any past recordings for previous sessions that we have hosted by clicking on the blog page and checking out the video. We do have another exciting webinar session for this month. If you guys want to go ahead and check that out, it's our new integration with SmartGate. So feel free to read about what this session will be about and register so you don't miss out. And then also make sure that you guys check out our LoadSmart community. It's filled with helpful articles and resources available for you guys. And as always, this session is being recorded, and the link will be shared with you guys after the session is completed. If you guys have any questions, feel free to submit those through the chat box. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our product lead, Julia Darold, and our solutions consultant, Tyler Rubottom, who have an amazing session in store for you guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia. I'm the product lead for Opendock. So pretty much leading the product when it comes to doc scheduling, YMS, gate management. Today, we're going to be covering a topic that is very important and kind of like is the ground work or the basis for Opendock and the value add that it brings to our customers. So managing warehouse, dock, and load type availability. We're going to cover what does that mean. We're going to cover the settings. We're going to cover some use cases. Hopefully, they're going to be helpful to you guys to be able to identify room for improvement or identify, things that you guys might want to change or might want to adapt to each of your facilities to be able to accommodate or reflect a little bit better your capacity and to streamline your operation. The goal is always to go over some of the features and some of the things that Opendock can offer to you guys so that you can get more familiar with features and use them really to help out your operation. So feel free, like Mark said, to use the chat to ask questions, to share use cases. If you have a specific scenario that we're not covering and you're finding it difficult to kind of replicate that using Opendock, share that with us. We might not have all the answers, but this is a great room for all of us to put our brains together and help you guys solve some of the problems that you guys might be facing. Now, getting started with, and Mark, can you switch over to the next slide? We're starting with why the availability setup matters so much. The way that I like to think about it is that Opendock's availability setting kind of covers like or has four different layers. The first layer is your warehouse operating hours, the broader one. The second layer is your dock schedules or your dock operating hours. The third layer is your load type availability. And then those are all preset, obviously, and part of your guys' settings. And then, like for one-offs, I need to close this real quick because we're having an emergency on the facility, or this afternoon, for whatever reason, someone's sick and I need to close off this dock. We have the reserves that you guys can use to kind of like close up the schedule and availability. We've covered reserves on a previous webinar and how to make the most out of them. So we're not going to be going too deep into that, but we are going to cover the warehouse availability, dock schedule availability, or docks availabilities, and load type availability a lot. So starting with the big picture and kind of how we want you guys to look at this, availability in Opendock is pretty much about defining what are the appointment slots that whoever is scheduling the appointment on the scheduling portal can actually see and schedule. So however it is that you guys set up availability of the warehouse, the load types, the docks is really going to determine and narrow down the available slots that the carrier user or the scheduling user is going to see. So if your warehouse, your dock, and your load type calendars, they're not aligned, you will end up with gaps. You might end up with overlaps, or you end up with carrier booking slots that aren't really possible for you guys to accommodate. So these small scheduling mismatches, they can't seem harmless at first, but when we get to the nitty-gritty of it in practice, they can create headaches for the operation. You can end up with double bookings. You can end up with like idle docs. They're sitting there, no appointments in them, or even carriers waiting around a lot, big queues, and that affects dwell times, as you guys know. So that's why it's so important to set up availability correctly. And it's so important that you guys have visibility of how Opendock calculates availability, right? So that you can cascade these rules properly in Opendock. With that, you can prevent these overlaps. You can keep the dock and the load type calendars aligned with the warehouse operating hours. You will show carriers only what's valid and actually available as slots. So you eliminate all the back and forth, the corrections, and so on and so forth. So reducing the manual fixes, the scheduling errors, the workarounds that you guys have to do. If you guys have your availability set up the best way possible, I think that helps a lot. Availability is not just the system setting for Opendock, is really the foundation for helping your operation run smooth by using Opendock in these specific settings. Mar, the next slide, please. Okay, now talking about cascading or the hierarchy, which is how I call it as well, is all these different layers, like I mentioned, like they are connected. One affects the other, and it's important that you guys understand how. So, talking about cascading, Opendock uses a really top-down hierarchy when it comes to availability. So, example, the rules that you guys set up on a higher level, on the warehouse level, will automatically flow down to the lower levels. I'm going to give you guys a couple of examples. So if you have a warehouse that's open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., the docks, the load types, all of them will have to fit into the 7 a.m., 7 p.m. because that's your warehouse operating hours. So it fits under that. If a dock, for example, is set to 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., then the load types, when they're scheduled on that specific dock, they can only exist on those hours as well. However, you have the flexibility to narrow it down even further depending on what you need to get done. So if you have a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. facility, you can have a dock that operates 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. so you can close it earlier. And this can be set on one specific dock, for example, and all the others respect the warehouse availability or operating hours. And same thing for the load types. You can really change or narrow down the availability so that you can reflect your actual capacity or how you actually operate on your facility. So those are the important things for you guys to know, and kind of like what does cascading really means, and kind of how these different rules kind of interact with each other. So what we want to make sure by the end of the session is that you guys understand how these rules are set up, and that you guys are able to look at them and create your own setup reflecting your operation as it actually runs. So that you can keep clean, predictable, but also allow for some flexibility. Now, next slide, more. Going a little deeper into the whole hierarchy thing with warehouse level, dock level rules, load type level rules. So at the warehouse level, the availability is very broad, so it applies across everything, and that's usually the first thing that you guys set up. So the way that you want to think about it is obviously your operational boundaries. This is how long we stay open for. At the dock level, you inherit the warehouse rules. So 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you inherit that to the dock, but then you can narrow it down even further. So certain docks can be shutting down earlier than other docks, for example. And then at the load type level, the rules can get even more specific, because this is where you start restricting availability further depending on what exactly you're moving. So example, you might have like a palletized freight that's accepted all day, but then oversized or anything that needs, for example, temperature control, like reefers and such, you only accept them during certain hours. So when a carrier books an appointment, what Opendock is going to do is look across the combination of these three layers: warehouse operating hours, dock operating hours, and the specific load type availability from the load type that the carrier or the carrier user selected for the appointment. So only the slots that are available across all three are the ones that are going to be shown to the carrier as available slots for them to schedule to. So with this, what we want to do is guarantee or make sure that the carrier is never seeing an invalid option. They only get what truly works for you guys' operation. Now, I think we can get to the live examples. These are some of the examples that we've seen with our customers, and Tyler is going to do a live demo for you guys covering some of the examples that we've seen and that we think are the most common use cases for all these different settings. I'm going to be taking a look at the chat for whatever it is that you guys want to comment or ask in there, and I'll be addressing the questions and comments in there. While Tyler is doing the demo, and even afterwards, we can address them. We can talk about the specific use cases that you guys might have. All right, so yeah, Tyler, to you now.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm just going to go over some examples on how to manipulate the schedules or adjust them to get the correct availability that you're looking for. So on the screen now here, this is just my demo account. You'll see it's very simple, very plain. Yours might look different. I just have an inbound dock and an outbound dock, and I have availability from 7 to 5. So I'm wide open on both docks from 7 to 5. So if I go to my warehouse and click on my Phoenix warehouse, which is the one that we were just looking at, the operating hours that you mentioned, again, these are what kind of control everything. It all starts here. So you'll see 7 to 5, which matches my currently what I have set up for my two docks. But what if I wanted to have, my outbound dock, for example, have a different schedule, not quite as wide as 7 to 5. So right now they're both 7 to 5, but let's say I wanted to only have my outbound dock available from 7 to 2 p.m. So then I would just go to my docs section here. Here are my two docks. I'm going to edit my outbound dock. And again, right now it matches my operating hours 7 to 5, but I want to close some of these hours to reduce the schedule because I only want to offer outbound loads from 7 to noon. So all I would have to do is come in here and close, which is the white, close all the slots from noon all the way to 5. So save that. So if I jump back out here to my appointment screen now, you will see that my outbound dock only has availability from 7 to noon, and it's grayed out after noon, which means it's closed and nobody can schedule appointments there. So I just wanted to kind of show you guys visually what it looks like when you reduce the dock schedule within the operating hours. So just remember, operating hours control everything. They need to be as wide as possible to accommodate all appointment activity. And then within those wide time frames, you can adjust your dock schedules accordingly. So that's one example how to reduce a dock schedule that's kind of within the operating hours, but not quite all the operating hours. So another example would be, so what if I wanted to offer extended hours on a Friday, for example? So right now, again, I've set up my operating hours from 7 to 5. So if I come back to my Phoenix warehouse, go to my operating hours, I'm 7 to 5. But I want to offer outbounds, let's say on Fridays, all the way up until 8 p.m. So the first thing you would have to do to accommodate that, to give you that option, would be to go to your operating hours and extend Friday to 8 p.m. Now, just by doing this, you're not saying that all appointments can go till 8 p.m. It just gives you the flexibility to allow appointments to go till 8 p.m. And by making this change, I'm not really impacting my current dock schedules. They're going to stay as they are. So let me go ahead and save that. But again, by doing that, it just gives you the option to now possibly take appointments till 8 p.m. if you want to. So now I would go to back to my docks. I'm going to go back to my outbound dock here. And you'll recall I already closed off 12 to 5, but I'm going to say on Fridays, I want to extend all the way until 8 p.m. So now you'll see I have some white cells here, which now I extend all the way to 8 p.m., which means I could accommodate appointments all the way till 8 p.m. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Friday here and highlight those hours. So now I have availability till 8 p.m. So now I'm going to save my dock schedule, come back out to my appointment screen to take a look. And you'll see, since today is Friday, it extends all the way out until 8 p.m. If I go to let's navigate to a Monday, you'll see it's now closed at noon like it was before. So I've only extended Fridays on my outbound dock. So that's a way you can extend just like one day of the week, for example, on a certain dock. Another example would be parallel capacity. So right now, each of my docks, my inbound and outbound dock, can only take one appointment at a time. If I come back to my warehouse and go to my docks, I'm going to add a parallel capacity dock onto my inbound dock, which really means I'm basically adding a second schedule in the background. So it's really tied to my inbound dock. It has the same scheduling rules, but I can now take 2 appointments at a time. So you'll see a little 2 here. I can click on that to extend, extend it. And now I could take 2 appointments at a time on my inbound dock. But if you wanted to control the capacity of your inbound dock, so let's say you can take 2 appointments in the morning up until noon, but only 1 appointment beyond noon on my inbound dock because you have like less labor, for example. So all you would do is go back to your dock schedules. This time what I'm going to do is click this little arrow. It's going to drop down so I can get into my capacity dock, because these 2 docks, again, your inbound dock and your parallel capacity inbound dock, can be controlled independently. So you can click the arrow and then click on the edit button on your parallel dock, and you'll have a whole new schedule you can adjust. So from here, let's say I wanted to, again, close it. Let's see. And again, this is my parallel dock. So I'm going to close it all the way beyond noon, I guess. I'm going to close all my availability. All right, so now just to visually show you what that looks like, if I go back out to my appointments section, click on my inbound dock, go ahead and expand it, you'll see that now my parallel dock has a grayed out area starting at noon. So I can take 2 appointments starting at 7 up until noon, and then once it hits noon, it's going to reduce to 1 appointment at a time starting at noon. So that's a way you can really control your capacity on a specific dock. So just wanted to kind of show you guys what that looks like and how you can control, how you can take multiple appointments at certain times of the day and then either reduce or increase your capacity at different times of the day by adjusting your parallel docks schedule. And then the last example I have here is the load type schedule itself. So as Ju mentioned, the hierarchy is the operating hours, which controls everything, gives you the option to schedule. Then you have your dock schedules that need to fit within those operating hours. But you can also reduce it even more granular to the load type level if you only wanted to offer a load type at a specific time of day. So for example, if I go back to my warehouse, this time we're going to go into the load types section. And I'm going to grab this container load type and click edit. And just like the docks, they also have a schedule at the very bottom that says load type schedule. So right now I can take this load type from 7 to 5, kind of like it initially was set up. But let's say I only want to take containers in the morning. So I'm going to close this load type schedule from noon from noon forward. So I'm only want to offer these from 7 to noon, or offer this load type. So now I've saved that. So now if I come back to my appointment section here and click on my inbound schedule to create an appointment, I'm going to select container. And on the next screen, you will see I only have availability from 7 to noon, where I can start that appointment. So it really allows you to control times of day when you want to offer a specific load type on a specific dock. So again, just to kind of recap, we have our operating hours. Every appointment needs to fit within those hours. Then you have the dock schedule itself that needs to fit within those operating hours. But again, you can reduce it as much as you want. And then if you want to get more granular to reduce it even further for specific load types, you can do that as well, by going to the load type and just reducing that schedule as well. So like you said, there's 3 layers. You have the operating hours, the dock schedule, and then the load type schedule. So those are kind of some examples I wanted to share just to visually show you guys what it looks like on the screen and how to do those things. Anything I missed you or anything you want to address in the chat?
No, I think that was great. So on the chat, Chris brought a very good use case. And I just want to comment here, like for everyone, because it might be the case for some of you guys as well. So in Chris's case, like let's say for example that they have the facility or the warehouse operating from 9 to 5 as or 8 to 5 like your example, Tyler, but then on peak season they have 2 specific docks, for example, that they're working with like 24/7. So how would they accommodate for that? What they would have to do now is really open the availability of the warehouse to 24/7 and close down the docks they're not open 24/7 so that they're have like a narrower availability or more limited availability. The caveat of that is that on the scheduling portal, it's going to show that your facility is now open 24/7. And Chris does not want to do that. He doesn't want for carriers to think that the facility is operating 24/7. What in fact they're doing is they're opening 2 docks 24/7 just to accommodate for the volume of peak season. So one is on the settings, you can do that. And my recommendation is to do that. Open up your warehouse availability and narrow down the dock availability so that you can accommodate for 1 or 2 specific docks or load types operating outside of your usual operating hours. But on the scheduling portal side, one of the improvements that we're going to make is allow for you guys to, one, hide the operating hours of the facility, or edit it so that you guys can really reflect what you guys want for the carriers to see in terms of availability. Right now, we just look at the warehouse operating hours, and this is what we put on the scheduling portal. But for cases like this, that's not ideal, and we understand that. There you go. That's a good example. So this looks at your warehouse operating hours. It doesn't look at your dock schedules. It doesn't look at your load type schedules. So there's a lot more complexity to it than just this. And I think that we need to help you guys with that, and either hiding or, manipulating this specifically, and what it shows in here is what you guys would want for us to do. And we're going to work on that. So I wanted to bring this example because I think a lot of facilities go through it when it comes to like peak season, like how do I open the availability, but kind of how do I control that? So this is how. First step is managing your availability like we've suggested. The second is you'll be able to edit or really manipulate this so it shows what you guys want it to show. All right, if you guys have more examples or more questions, please pop them on the chat or on the Q&A thing here on the screen, and we'll be addressing them. If there's not enough time for us to address everything on the webinar, I'll make sure that we reach out to you guys afterwards. Just to close off or really sum up what we've gone through on the presentation, we've put together some like best practices for clean scheduling, some kind of like practical tips for you guys to have. So first off is setting the warehouse operating hours first, and then using the dock schedules and the load type schedules to override according to how your operation runs. So I want to make sure that, if I'm working or if my warehouse or my facility operates from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., that's my overall availability. Now I'm going to work with my dock schedules and my load type schedules to really, tailor it to how my operation works. Then review conflicts after the changes that you guys made. There's a really cool feature that you guys can find it on the warehouse settings, fields and forms, preview of scheduling portal. All the changes that you guys made, you can go and look at the preview scheduling portal and play around with the different options. If I pick this load type, if I select that load type, what is it that's going to show up for the carrier? Play around with the different scenarios so that you can see what the carrier's experience is like when they're trying to schedule an appointment. Am I narrowing it down too much that they cannot find availability? Am I leaving it too open that I am, having like, spread out appointments, and then, like I'm not optimizing my dock schedules, for example. Another one that's a good one, using consistent namings for docks and for load types. Make it easier on whoever is pulling reports, on whoever it is that's managing availability, and especially on the carriers that are scheduling the appointments. If you guys are consistent with the naming conventions for the docks, for the load types, it's going to be a lot easier for you guys to visually understand what's happening, and for whoever is scheduling the appointment to pick the right options. And then keep it simple as much as possible. We know that operations are very complex, but the simpler that you guys keep the exceptions and the rules that you guys are setting up, the more visibility you're going to have at the gaps and the things that need improvement. Not everything needs to necessarily be tailored into a new rule. Sometimes adjusting your operation a little bit or adjusting things here and there are really going to solve the problem for you guys, and it doesn't have to be a big adjustment. So keeping that in mind as well, as in keeping it simple and something that's easy to identify. It's way better than creating, multiple rules that are too complex, and then at one point you're going to be lost around all the different settings that you guys created. So that's what I like to do. And then have a really clear view of how your operation runs, right? All the exception rules and the reasons why. You need to make sure that you know, for example, why this load type is only available in the mornings, for example, or why these dock schedules are set up like this. If you can keep that documented somewhere where you guys can look back and understand why that decision is made, I think that's a good tip as well. And we use this a lot when we're building Opendock as well as a product. It's a complex product, so big now, and so a lot of times you need to go back and understand, why did we make the decision to create this certain way? And so by going back and looking at the reason why, you can understand, okay, there's a limitation here. Oh, okay, I cannot do this because of that. And so you kind of like keeping that mapped out. I think it's really good for you guys to be able to go back and reason around the decisions that you guys were made when onboarding, when first setting up the account, and so on and so forth. So I see some questions. Cindy, you see your comment here. Is there a plan to set a start date and end date for the revised doc schedule? I'm most interested in start date. Oh, this is a great comment. So basically, I think based on what you're saying, you're thinking about like scheduling a change for my doc schedules. Like peak season, for example, starts in January, let's say. From January onwards, I want this to be the schedule or the rules that I set up. And it starts in January, ends in March, because that's my peak season. And then after that, I wanted to go back to normal. I think that's kind of the example. There is an idea. We all think that this is a great idea. We all think that this could be a great addition to the project. We don't have a timeline for implementing that yet, but we have been implementing sort of like the groundwork for that to be possible. So giving you guys an example, hoping this doesn't sound too technical, but we started to record like the historic changes or the history of everything that you guys set up. Example, in January, I had my schedule like this. In February, it's like this. We didn't used to record that. Every time that you change, we kind of like started clean, and then it's now reflected what you guys changed. We now have the historic data, kind of like you can go back and look at the metrics, the KPIs, all of you guys' data based on what you had as a setting in the past. This allows for us to also do that for future changes and schedule future changes and schedule, peak season settings and whatnot. So we set the groundwork for that, and I think it's definitely something that we want to get to in the future. We just don't have a timeline for it yet, but it makes total sense. All right, guys, we're almost at time. If there's any like last minute question or comment that you guys might have, this would be a great time. If not, feel free to reach out to us. A lot of you guys have, my email, can contact me directly. So feel free to do that if you have questions, if you need further assistance, or if you guys want to go, cover any. Thank you. So if you guys want to cover anything in particular, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much, guys.